Hi guys, so welcome back to my channel. Today, as you can tell by the title, we're going to be talking about everything that has to do with breastfeeding. So whatever your situation may be, maybe you are expecting babies cooking right now in the belly, or you're somebody who is not producing as much as you would like. Maybe you're struggling with breastfeeding right now, or just kind of are curious. So let's go ahead and jump right in, because I have a couple of things that I do want to share with you guys. I just want to disclose that this is just my opinion, my experience. Always consult a lactation consultant or a pediatrician, a medical professional. This is just my opinion and my experience, and I hope that what I do share today can also help you. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. I'm going to be looking down because I have my notes on my phone. So I want to start off, like I said, I want to start off with things and tips that I've learned along the way. Breastfeeding in general is it's not easy. I hear a lot of people say, oh, you're so lucky that you got to breastfeed and that, you were able to produce and all that stuff. And it's not that it's offensive or anything like that. Just, I don't know if lucky is the right word to use, when somebody is breastfeeding. I mean, everybody's breastfeeding journey is different. But for me, I definitely worked for mine. I had cracked nipples, bleeding nipples, dealing with getting my daughter to latch, and all that was a whole thing in itself. And I definitely fought for and went through all the troubles and trials and all that stuff to try and breastfeed, because that was my goal. And one thing I do want to share is, if all this just depends on how you feel and what your goals are. Do you want to try really hard and try all the things to try and breastfeed, or do you just want to give it kind of a go, and if it just doesn't work out, then you're fine switching to formula? And whatever your choice is, there's no right or wrong. Literally, you guys, your baby is a happy baby, is a fed baby. And no matter if you do formula or if you do breast milk, whatever it is your choice, and whatever it is that you want to do for your baby and what fits right for your family. Everybody is different. And for me personally, my goal was truly to breastfeed, and it was hard. It really was hard, especially being a first-time mom. You kind of just encounter all these things where you're like, oh, I didn't know this, I didn't know this, I didn't know that. So I definitely watched a lot of breastfeeding videos, and there was a lot of the videos that I watched and things that I'll be sharing today were not said in those videos. So I want this to be the most informative that it can be. So with breastfeeding, feeding baby within a 24-hour period, you're looking at 8 to 12 times. Baby is really small. The baby's belly is like this small, and you're talking about a newborn, obviously. So it's like the smallest thing ever. So babies, because what they do is they eat and they just get full with like an ounce of milk, right, in the beginning, depending on the size of your baby too, right? But usually it's like an ounce or less, and their little bellies get full, they pee, and then they get hungry again. That's why they eat so often. But you're looking around 8 to 12 times within a 24-hour period. When you latch baby on your breast, you want to try and listen the way that your milk is coming out. Is the baby making swallowing sounds? So take a moment, listen to your baby. You want to make sure you're listening for that your baby is swallowing. If you hear a clicking sound, like if you hear a clicking sound when baby is breastfeeding, that is because they are not latched on correctly. It is a poor latch. Try, take baby off, and of course you never just want to pull baby off, because baby is holding on to your nipple and they will pull it, and you'll just see like your nipple just extend, and it doesn't feel good. But what you do is you grab your finger and you put it, like if this is baby's mouth, they're latched on, right? So you grab your finger and you just put it right in the corner of their mouth and just kind of move it, and baby will come off, and then that's when you take baby off. If you hear a clicking sound, that is because, yeah, baby is not latched on correctly. Breastfeeding overall shouldn't really hurt. In the beginning, you will feel maybe some soreness or like irritation because, you know, your nipples are going to get used to your baby sucking on them. But if it's just constant hurting throughout the whole time, uncomfortable, painful, then of course baby is not latched on correctly. But overall, you should not be getting cracked nipples, bleeding nipples. And I think in the beginning, it's, you know, baby's trying to get used to it. Your nipples are getting used to it. It just depends on how sensitive you are as well. So maybe in the beginning there might be a little bit of that, but you know, it should not last long at all, like not even more than a week. That's probably even too long. But if your nipples are cracked and they feel irritated, they do sell cream for it. You can rub it up on your nipple and it's safe for baby to, like if you were to put it and baby were to suck, like baby is fine. But this is just a kind of condition, and it's like a chapped lip, you know, you put chapstick on, that's also how it works for your nipple. So check that out if you are somebody who is just dealing with irritation, there's just cracked and all that stuff. And if it's just constant cracking and bleeding, that should not be happening. That means baby is just latched on poorly. So how should you know if baby is latched on correctly? Overall, you should not be in pain. It's not painful to breastfeed. You should hear swallowing sounds. Your nipples should be the same shape. If you're like, oh, well, this doesn't hurt, but you know, you take baby off, and it depends on your pain tolerance too, because in the beginning I'm like, oh, it's fine. I mean, it did kind of irritate and hurt, but when my baby was done breastfeeding, especially in the beginning, my nipple would be a different shape than when it was in the beginning. And different shapes could be like a lipstick shape. If you think of a regular lipstick tube, you know how lipsticks are, they're kind of like diagonal. I'll insert pictures here, but kind of that shape, you will see your nipple do that if baby is latched on not correctly, or if your nipple is flat when it comes out. There's different types of ways that your nipple can be shaped if baby's not latched on correctly. Your nipple is round, and when your nipple goes in, baby feeds. When you are done, your nipple should be the same shape. It should not change or anything like that. Also, an indicator if baby is not latched on correctly is if your nipple is kind of white at the end. Like that's just kind of a signal like your baby was sucking too hard and like nothing was coming out. So when you're done breastfeeding and your nipple is shaped a different way, if it's cracked and bleeding, if it was painful, and if your nipple is kind of white, then your baby is not latched on correctly. So just kind of look out for those things. And if you do not have any of those things, then awesome. You hear swallowing sounds, all that, beautiful. Then your baby is latched on. Good. Poop also can be affected by the way they eat and how much they're consuming. And it's a good indicator. It's a good thing to look at when you are like, is baby getting enough? Is baby full? You know, and all that stuff. So poop can also be affected by day 4 or 5. Breastfeeding babies, poop should be yellow. If their poop is still coming out green and you are just breastfeeding, then it can either be due to hinge milk imbalance or food sensitivities. So by day 4 or 5, and as you guys saw in the picture here, it's just different days for. It shows like kind of like how your baby's poop goes, and if your baby is breastfed, their poop should be yellow by day 4 or 5. If the baby's poop is still green or like a really dark color, if you're just exclusively breastfeeding, then baby is not latched on correctly or sucking out correctly and getting all the milk that they should. That could be due to hinge milk imbalance or food sensitivities. One of the top things that babies can be sensitive to is dairy. Write down what you regularly eat, and what you can do is start eliminating things. And one of the top things to take off your diet is dairy. And if you take out dairy completely and just kind of track how your baby's poops come out, how they're feeling, and all that, and that's a good indicator kind of to tell if you need to kind of restrict your diet just while you breastfeed. So that is on the food sensitivity side. Now, if you are somebody that does not know what hinge milk is, so, and I'm gonna read it here because I don't want to butcher it, but fore milk is the milk that comes with your letdown. It has more water and sugar. Hinge milk is the end portion, and it's richer in fats. The hind milk will make baby more satisfied, promotes weight gain, and makes poop yellow. When baby drinks only what comes out during your letdown, frothy green poops can happen. If you do not know what a letdown is, it's pretty much the first milk that comes out of your boobs just by like stimulating your nipples if you just were to touch it, or just as soon as baby is on and starts sucking just even a little, that first milk that comes out immediately, that's your letdown. You can also tell if it's your letdown by the way your baby sucks. First get on there. If you have a heavy letdown, then baby will be sucking small, kind of like faster sucks because the milk is coming so fast that they kind of need to keep up with it. That's when they're eating the letdown. But when their sucks become stronger and slow down, that's because, okay, now they got to really work to get the milk out of your boob. And usually the foremilk is in that beginning with the letdown. It's just sugar and water mostly. As soon as, if baby is latched on good to your boob, then they're really working to get all the milk that has fat in it, which that milk is what helps them gain weight. And that's usually like in the back, that's called hind milk. It's richer in fats. That's what promotes baby to gain weight and make sure that they're eating good and they are satisfied, and you will see in their poops. If your baby's poop is yellow, then awesome, they're getting what they need. If your baby's already 4 or 5 days old and their poop is still green or dark in color, then that means that they're not properly taking out what they need to from your boob. So when it comes to latching, and I know it's always a mystery, and I think as a first-time mom especially, you're always like, am I latched on correctly? How do I do it? And then you're like toggling with like your boob and your nipple and squeezing and all that stuff. And I will link a couple videos down below that helped me kind of learn with the latching. Also, I did have a midwife, so my midwife did help me kind of on how to get a proper latch. And if you're somebody who really is dedicated and that your goal is to breastfeed, then I definitely would recommend finding some help. Somebody who knows and has experience with it, if it's a lactation consultant, and they can help you. I think it's worth it to pay somebody to kind of help you. And I've seen a lot of videos on YouTube and all that, and for me personally, I'm like hands-on, in-person learning type, and especially when it comes to that, it's like you're in your baby's all wiggly and all that stuff, so it's just a lot to deal with. So having somebody who kind of just knows what they're doing is very, very helpful. But if you're somebody who just wants to watch videos, I will link some down below that kind of helped me as well. If, with that being said, if you've tried your hardest and you've seeked a lactation consultant to get baby on right, and you feel like you're doing correctly and baby's on correctly, and still baby is just not getting it, or it still hurts and all that, then and this is something that Eveluna had, my daughter. She had a tongue tie, and what a tongue tie is pretty much that little skin that connects the tongue, your tongue to the bottom of your mouth. So if this is the floor of the baby's mouth, and this is their tongue. So if they have a tongue tie, and there's different types of tongue ties, and I'll see if I can upload a picture here. But what happens is, if depending on however tight they are, then if baby is sucking and they're only able to move the tip of their tongue, then the breastfeeding won't be so effective and they won't be getting what they need. What you need is a full-on motion tongue. But just depending, sometimes maybe they could just move the tip. Sometimes they can only, like this is stuck down here, and like that's all they can do. And what happens is that and it's not the end of the world, but if you're somebody in this case who's really dedicated to breastfeeding, then that's something to consider, and that is getting a revision done, which means that what they do is, and I know it sounds kind of like rough, but in the beginning when babies are newborns, their nerves are not fully developed in their mouth. So when they go in to get a revision, which is getting that like cut to kind of release the tongue, they don't feel it. They actually don't even numb your baby, because your baby does not feel it, and it's only to a certain amount months that they do it. I think it's 2 months or something like that. Honestly, I remember going, but I don't want to give false information. But I know there's a time frame that they can do that, where they won't numb baby because their nerves are not fully developed and they won't even feel it. I think it's more painful for a parent to like know that your baby is going through that and they're just fine. And then what happens is that daily you have to be massaging your baby every certain amount of hours for a certain amount of time, massaging under the tongue to make sure that wound heals and it doesn't reattach to the bottom of your baby's mouth. And a good amount of times that works for baby, and it helps them like, oh, okay, like, whoa, I have this whole tongue to use, you know, it just wasn't the tip of my tongue. But how do you know if your baby has a tongue tie? And it's just about going to get a consultation, seeing if your baby truly does have a tongue tie and if that is affecting the way that, you know, they're getting on your breast. So that's also, you know, another thing to look in, and that can also help your baby out and your breastfeeding journey. Another thing I did not know about was nipple shields. I really wanted to breastfeed, and it was, you know, important to me to breastfeed, and my midwife was so great in finding alternatives, you know, to help me. But I was in such pain. My nipples were cracked, they were bleeding. One of the things that my midwife did recommend was nipple shields, and I'm so happy that she did, and God bless these things and whoever invented them, because they really saved my breastfeeding journey. I'll insert a picture here of what nipple shields are, and you do is like you kind of open it, put it on your nipple, and now that kind of protects you. It's that barrier that protects, you know, baby's poor latch to your boob. And I use that for a lot of months. I would definitely recommend that to you if you want to save your breastfeeding journey. Maybe that works for you. And just remember that there's different sizings. Everyone's nipples are different, so you just got to look for your size for your nipple shield. There's a lot of things that you go through when breastfeeding, and one of those things is you can get mastitis. And if you don't know what mastitis is, and I'm going to read it so I don't butcher it, but it's a blocked milk duct or bacteria entering the breast. It usually occurs within the first 3 months of breastfeeding. Symptoms include breast pain, swelling, warmth, fever, and chills. I've never had mastitis, at least not badly. I know my sister did, and she said it was the worst thing ever. But ways that you can avoid mastitis is that when you're breastfeeding or when you are pumping, is massaging your boob, grabbing it, you know, pushing it like this, massaging the top as well. Wanted to avoid it at all costs. So every single time I would shower, I would make sure I would massage both of my boobs. When I would breastfeed or pump, make sure, you know, I'm massaging my boobs, and to kind of avoid that. So that is the things that I've learned kind of in breastfeeding, and I hope that helps you.
If there's a question, it can't wait another day. Don't feel like it's all in vain. I try to remember, it ain't a